the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio Newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
Good day with your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw. First with the highlights. The Guyana Power and Light says rising fuel prices as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war are denting its coffers. Guyana hopes to eliminate 5 infectious diseases with help from the Pan American Health Organization. In the region, Trinidad and Tobago says it is watching the supply of wheat on the international market. And St. Martin is lifting its mask mandate. And you'll have your latest international news coming from the BBC. Do stay tuned.
Beauty and health, parenting and relationships, knowing your rights, and a variety of enlightening content, and get value for your money. Call our helpful staff today on 223-1056 or 223-1041 today.
Now for your news in detail. The state-owned Guyana Power and Light Incorporated GPL says the Russia-Ukraine war has triggered a sharp spike in the price of fuel. The company says this has resulted in monthly operational expenses being 4.5 billion Guyana dollars compared to 3 billion Guyana dollars in revenues. The Brent crude oil price on a Monday rose to $139 per barrel, the highest in 14 years, while GPL said its landed cost to fuel was $140 per barrel on Monday. The power company painted a gloomy picture of its financials: 3,700 barrels of fuel per day at a cost of 111.5 million Guyana dollars, and described the situation as an extremely challenging and unsustainable position. However, the power company gave no clear indication that the Public Utilities Commission, PUC, would be asked to approve an increase in electricity bills. GPL says this is financially challenging position cannot be sustained at current fuel prices. The power company also did not announce an increase in power outages to conserve fuel consumption. However, GPL says that every kilowatt hour of electricity not generated would reduce the company's fuel costs and, by extension, the overall operating costs. Questions were Monday raised about the procurement of almost $17 million in drugs and medical supplies for the Guyana Forensic Laboratory. At a hearing of the Public Accounts Committee, PAC, an audit director at the Auditor General's office, Audrey Badley, said not all of the items had been supplied in 2017.
The contract was awarded in the sum of $16.9 million, and the full amount was paid to the supplier. Now, in September of 2018, only $6 million of supplies were received. So the supplier failed to provide all the items at that time. So the full amount was paid to the contractor, but he failed to deliver all the items.
The PSC hearing was also told that the remainder of the items had been delivered in 2019. Acting chairman of the PAC, Ganesh Mahipal, said if discrepancy had been identified, it should have been kept on the radar all the time.
If we were examining these years as for year, as opposed to how we have merged these two here, 2017 we would have found this issue and we would have drill it as we are right now in 2018. And when we come to 2018 report, we would not have seen it repeating itself when in actuality the items were delivered in 2019. So the aid report should have flagged it as an issue still. Am I correct, Ms. Badley?
Yes, Chairman, you are correct.
The PSC also heard from the Principal Assistant Secretary of Finance that $14.7 million worth of items had been supplied to the Guyana Forensic Laboratory and $2.7 million had been refunded. Private sector businesses across the Caribbean community CARICOM are being encouraged to invest in ocean-going transportation. This is against the background of the need for cheaper transportation of agricultural produce and products in the region to help reduce CARICOM's food import bill. President Irfanali, who is responsible for agriculture in CARICOM's quasi-cabinet, says businesses are being invited to invest in cargo transportation services.
Very important is the issue of transportation and logistics, and we have decided that we're going to make a call to the private sector through an expression of interest for a finance and operate, manage proposals for the movement of cargo, people, vehicles. And we've also decided that as part of that investment forum, every country will give a list of incentives that they will give towards an investment like this that would bring a solution to the transport and logistics hurdle that we face as a region for intra-regional trade.
President Irfanali. The Pan American Health Organization and Guyana are teaming up to eliminate 5 neglected infectious diseases. Overall, there are 20 diseases in 42 groups that the World Health Organization wants to eliminate over the next 10 years. Statistics show that more than 1 billion persons are infected by these diseases. In Guyana, Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony says filaria, chiggers, leishmania, and leprosy, along with soil-transmitted elements that cause anemia, are being targeted by this project. He says that overall, Guyana has been doing well in keeping the prevalence of these diseases very low.
So with the big 5, I think, it is not as bad as maybe some of the other regions of the world, because they are affecting relatively small numbers of people, with exceptions of the soil-transmitted elements. But outside of that, I think the numbers are really small. And I therefore believe that we'll be able to resolve a lot of these problems in a faster time. So even this 5-year duration that we have, I think we can do it much faster if we have that concentrated focus.
The health minister is urging participants to, at the same time, tackle other health-related issues such as dengue and snake bites.
Now, outside of these, we still have some other issues. And maybe while it might not be the core neglected infections that we're talking about, since these 5 might not be so challenging, we perhaps need to add some more. And so I want to ask you also to perhaps start thinking about what we can do with dengue, because it's still a challenge for us here in the country. Very often we hear of persons getting infected, and we perhaps need to think seriously to have a more robust program of trying to reduce the burden of dengue in Guyana. So that's something that maybe we should put on our radar.
Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony. The Health Ministry says the number of COVID-19 patients who are receiving intensive care has dropped to 5. Official figures also show that 7 new cases have been recorded within the past 24 hours. Overall, 14 persons are hospitalized and 206 have been ordered to isolate themselves at home. The death toll so far since the pandemic began in March 2020 is 1,223. President Irfan Ali has said that more COVID-19 measures will be relaxed. Already, the curfew has been discontinued, and he says incoming passengers no longer need to submit COVID location forms to the health desk. Now for the news in the region. Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Amur Matli is visiting the West African nation of Ghana. She thanked Ghana for having the courage to go out on its own as a republic, saying it was such actions that could lead more small island developing states to also take the plunge. She also expects ties between African countries and CARICOM member states to become even stronger in the coming years. Ms. Matli made the comments while delivering the feature address at Ghana's 65th Independence Anniversary celebrations early Sunday morning. Ghana is celebrating its 65th Independence Anniversary. With the war raging between Ukraine and Russia, two of the world's largest producers of wheat, Trinidad and Tobago's National Flour Mills, NFM, has said its priority is securing enough of the grain to supply the country and admits it will have to make decisions if the price continues to rise. In an interview with the Guardian media, its CEO, Ian Mitchell, acknowledges that a shortage of wheat in Europe will trickle down to the rest of the world. He says NFM's stocks are in good position for the next 2 months as it has quite a bit of storage. He says the company does not have to go back out to the market immediately. He also explained, however, that the NFM does not wait until stocks are depleting to replenish. He said coming closer to the end of March, the company will have a better idea about where the prices will be. He reiterated that the company's priority will be to secure wheat to ensure that if there's any availability issue, the NFM is pretty much covered. And if the situation worsens, then the NFM will have to do some evaluations, Mitchell said. According to the CEO, wheat prices have gone up by over $10 a bushel, which included all strains of wheat. He said while the company does not buy European wheat, all of the wheat produced worldwide supplies the international market. Another factor the company continues to monitor is the cost of freight and transportation, which have already affected global supplies due to the war. St. Martin will from next Tuesday relax the use of masks. SMS News reports that Health and Labor Minister Omar Otley says St. Martin has recorded a 1% infectious rate over the last week. He says this is significantly lower than the World Health Organization's recommended threshold of a 5% infectious rate. The minister stated that this puts St. Martin in the low-risk category, and so the mask mandate has been relaxed from code red to code green from Tuesday, March 15. The minister also stated that given the country's current status, he would advise that the 3 a.m. business closure can be lifted. This is another step towards the normalcy strategy in St. Martin. He says establishments will still reserve the right to request a mask to enter their premises, but there will be no penalties from government inspectors if no mask is worn in such establishments. Antigua and Barbados' National Office of Disaster Services NODS is encouraging participation in the annual Tsunami Exercise Carib Wave on Thursday. The exercise is testing aspects of tsunami readiness throughout the region. This activity is conducted by the Intergovernmental Coordination Group for Tsunami and Other Coastal Hazards Warning System for the Caribbean and adjacent regions associated with UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. The March 10th Tsunami Exercise is coordinated with the Barbados-based Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, CDEMA, the regional body responsible for disaster management. The threat of tsunamis to the region is real, and there have been significant efforts by disaster personnel to enhance tsunami preparedness in Antigua and Barbuda and the rest of the region. Several areas in Antigua have been declared tsunami ready through a UNESCO program. They are St. John's City and the districts of St. John's City South and St. John's City West. And lastly, in the region, Colombian President Ivan Duque on Monday said any solution for Venezuela's future must come through genuine, transparent presidential elections. A top delegation from the U.S. government traveled to Caracas since the weekend to talk with Maduro and other Venezuelan officials about the possibility of easing U.S. oil sanctions. The U.S. wanted an exchange for a series of demands, including Maduro's condemnation of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The first high-level bilateral talks between the United States and Venezuela in years caught Venezuela's opposition led by Juan Guaido almost off guard, as his interim government, recognized by Colombia and the United States, was notified at the last minute. U.S. and Venezuelan officials made scant progress toward a deal in a Saturday's meeting at the presidential palace that was full of maximalist demands, according to a source close to the talks. This reflected long-time tensions between the Western Hemisphere's main power and one of its biggest ideological foes. Washington is seeking to separate Russia from one of its key allies while securing alternative oil supplies in case wider sanctions are imposed on Russia's energy sector. If U.S. trading oil sanctions on Venezuela in effect since 2019 were lifted, the OPEC member nation could potentially increase exports. And here now is your international news coming from the BBC.
Hello, I'm Eileen McHugh with the BBC News. Ukrainian officials say a humanitarian corridor for civilians to leave the northeastern city of Sumy is largely holding, despite one instance of Russian forces breaching the ceasefire. The local governor said convoys of vehicles were leaving in waves for the city of Poltava, further away from the Russian border. A medical student who lives in the city, Anastasia, told the BBC she was now facing an agonising choice.
I'm deciding whether or not to leave my family. I wanted my mom to go with me, but she's refusing. Although I understand that it's the right decision to go, it's more or less safe. No, it's logical. It's better, but still, it's hard to leave behind your back your family.
The United Nations says the number of people who have fled Ukraine since the Russian invasion has gone above 2 million. The UN Refugee Agency chief warned that Europe now needed to start preparing for a second wave of even more vulnerable refugees if the war continues. Poland says it has processed more than half of those who've left Ukraine. 40% are estimated to have moved on to third countries. Others are being sheltered by friends or family members. Shell has announced its complete withdrawal from Russian oil and gas. The British firm also apologised for buying cut-price Russian oil last week. Here's our business correspondent Theo Leggett.
Shell says it will immediately stop buying consignments of Russian crude oil at short notice and will not renew its long-term supply contracts. It will also shut down its service stations, its aviation fuels business and its lubricants operations in Russia. Ultimately, it says it wants to withdraw from its involvement in all Russian hydrocarbons, including petroleum products, gas and liquid natural gas, although it says this will be a complex challenge and will take time. Shell had already said it would withdraw from a number of major ventures in Russia, including the Nord Stream 2 pipeline and the Sakhalin 2 oil and gas project.
US media say President Biden is expected to announce a ban on American imports of Russian oil, natural gas and coal at a news conference within the next hour. He's been under growing bipartisan pressure in Congress. The reports say the US intends to make the move unilaterally without its European allies, who are much more dependent on Russian gas and oil. Speaking during a visit to Estonia, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, said action was needed.
There is, I think, a significant not only opportunity but imperative in this moment to finally move off of, for many countries in Europe, a dependence on Russian energy because Russia uses it as a weapon.
World News from the BBC. Some news just in. The European Commission says it will reduce EU demand for Russian gas by 2/3 before the end of the year. It says it will achieve this by diversifying gas supplies and replacing gas in heating and power generation. The leaders of China, France and Germany have held a virtual meeting to discuss the war in Ukraine. President Xi Jinping, an ally of Vladimir Putin, has refused to criticise the Russian invasion. He called the crisis deeply worrying, but said sanctions against Russia could drag down the world economy. An 11-year-old Ukrainian boy has been hailed as a hero in Slovakia after travelling 1,200 kilometres alone to escape the war in his country. Hassan arrived on the Slovak border with a phone number written on his hand. His widowed mother in the city of Zaporizhia had put him on a train towards Bratislava, where his siblings live. She'd stayed behind to care for her elderly mother. The UN's human rights chief, Michelle Bachelet, has announced she'll visit the Chinese region of Xinjiang, where Beijing is accused of widespread abuses. Michael Bristow reports.
The trip was announced following months of negotiations between the UN and China over the terms of the visit. Ms. Bachelet had said she'd only go if she was guaranteed meaningful and unsupervised access. It seems the UN has now received those assurances, although it's hard to see Chinese officials allowing her to do everything she wants. China is accused of putting 1 million ethnic Uyghurs into re-education camps in Xinjiang. It denies carrying out abuses.
Iran says it has successfully put another military satellite into orbit as talks to revive a nuclear deal between Tehran and major powers reach a crucial stage. Iran put its first military satellite into orbit nearly a year ago. The US says it's worried such launches could boost Iran's ballistic missile technology. That's the BBC News.
And that was your international news. Here is a recap of the highlights. The Guyana Power and Light says rising fuel prices as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war are denting its coffers. Guyana hopes to eliminate 5 infectious diseases with help from the Pan American Health Organization. And in the region, Trinidad and Tobago says it is watching the supply of wheat on the international market, and St. Martin is lifting its mask mandate. And you had your latest international news coming from the BBC. And that was your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.